This program tonight is sponsored by Mr. Asher and Mr. Morad Zamir in memory of Yitzchak Zamir ben Asher, and of course Mr. Shalom Havlavshvili in memory of his dear wife Angela Sarah Bas David. Angela's daughter is here, Angela's husband is here. Hashem should bless them. They should be able to get over this very difficult time, and that the schus of our shiur that we are giving tonight should be for her neshama and the strength of the family. This is also being sponsored by Mr. and Mrs. David Eshagian in memory of Yosef ben Geula, and of course for the hatzlacha of the family and congregation of Am Yisrael, and for the safety of all the chayalim. Shalom, we thank you for sponsoring tonight. We're talking now about Avas Yisrael. As we said, in the 21 days between Shiva Asar B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, it's like the 21 days between Rosh Hashanah and Hoshana Rabbah. And as we said, and I'm just repeating this for the video, that just as Hashem said to Yirmiyahu that he should see a vision, and in Perek Aleph in Yirmiyahu it says that Hashem showed him the branch of almonds, an almond tree branch, because that blossoms in 21 days, and the flowers are white, and white symbolizes the purity of doing mitzvot and repenting. So I want to tell you another story. I was in Sao Paulo about 6 months ago, and I was there on a speaking engagement. I spoke in different places, and Saturday night there was a Malava Malka. Everybody was getting together, and I was sitting at a table, and to make conversation, I just asked everybody their name. And one person told me that his name is Daniel Sonnenfeld. I said, Sonnenfeld? Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld was the rabbi of the old city of Yerushalayim many, many years ago. Are you related to him? He says, yeah, that was my great-grandfather. I said, wow, that's amazing. Could you please tell me a great story? I mean, he was a great Rav, a great Talmud Chacham, the Rav in the old city of Yerushalayim. He says, I'll tell you a story that's legendary in our family. Here we're also going to see tremendous Avas Yisrael, and we're going to see exactly how great people think. Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, as I said, was the rabbi of the old city of Yerushalayim. And Nebuch, his wife, passed away. He was already older, and so his daughter-in-law, Shana, would come in, and she would help her father-in-law with things around the house. One morning, she came into the house, and Rabbi Yosef Chaim says, I hear somebody crying in the courtyard, in the backyard. Is everything okay? She says, you're right, I'll go out to check it. And she goes out and she sees that it's a Yemenite woman. She's an almanah. An almanah is a widow. She was the one who washed everybody's laundry. She would come every day to wash the laundry, and then she would hang it up and clean it and then deliver it to all the families. But she was crying. And Rabbi Yosef Chaim's daughter-in-law, Shana, asked her, why are you crying? She said, I didn't realize that it's Rosh Chodesh today. And there is a custom that women do not do laundry on Rosh Chodesh. She said, I didn't know that. And now I already paid my babysitter, and I'm going to go home. I come here to get money for the work that I do. And with that money, I go on my way home, I buy food for my children. I'm not going to have money to buy food for my children. I didn't know about this minhag, this law about Rosh Chodesh. So Shana goes into her father-in-law, and she tells her, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, the lady is crying. She's the Yemenite koveset. In Hebrew, koveset is the washerwoman, and she didn't know that they don't do laundry, and now she's stuck because she's not going to have any money. So Rabbi Yosef Chaim says to his daughter-in-law, do we have any laundry in the house? She says, yeah. He says, run out right now and tell her we're coming out in a minute. She runs out and she tells the Yemenite lady, don't worry, we're going to be out in a moment. She comes inside and she gathers together the laundry, but before she goes outside, she says to Rabbi Yosef Chaim, what about the minhag? What about the custom in Klal Yisrael that the women don't do laundry on Rosh Chodesh? Listen to what Rabbi Yosef Chaim said. Rabbi Yosef Chaim said, helping an almana, making sure that she has food for her children, is a deraisa. That's in the Torah, that you have to help an almana. Not doing laundry on Rosh Chodesh is only a minhag. The halacha and the Torah is more important than the minik. We're going to bring out the laundry. And you know something? When he brought out the laundry, when she brought out the laundry, everybody else brought the laundry for that woman. And that's the priority. Sometimes we think that we are being machmir, that we're doing something that's right, but we have to know the priorities. What's more important than helping a poor woman in Almana who has no food for her children, has no money for herself? It's true, the minig is important, but it's not as important as taking care of an Almana. And I'll tell you a very personal story. A very personal story just on this thing. When I was 21 years old, my father passed away. I'm the oldest of 7 children, and I supported my mother and my younger brothers and sisters. Now, many of you know that the books that I've written are called the Maggid series, and it started with Rab Shalom Shvadron, who was the Maggid of Yerushalayim. It's a whole long story, which is not for now, how I got to know him, how my parents got to know him. But he came to our Seder after my father passed away. A year after my father passed away, he had been in the house, he knew my father, but now that my father was not here, he came to be with us for the Seder. And Israelis celebrate only one day Yontif. We, in Golos, we have 2 days Yontif, just like we have 2 days Pesach, 2 days Sukkot, and 2 days Shavuos. So this was the only Seder that he was going to have that year. And it was on a Saturday night. And on a Saturday night, the Seder starts very late because you can't prepare on Shabbos for Matzoi Shabbos. So now we're sitting at the Seder. I'm sitting at the head together with Rab Shalom. And the Seder is taking very long because all the grandchildren were there and everybody wanted to impress my mother, you know, with their songs and all the Divrei Torah. And I don't have to tell you, there's schools, they prepare for months for the holiday, for the night of the Seder. But I knew that Rab Shalom Shvadron always ate the afikomen before Chatzos, before midnight at Chatzos. And now, if this Seder was going to keep on going so slowly, we were going to miss Chatzos, and he was going to eat the afikomen afterwards. So I said to my mother, Ma, we have to rush. I didn't think he understood English, but he understood what I said, and he poked me on the side. And he said to me in Yiddish, Eil Zachnet, that means don't rush. I started saying, well, what about that? He poked me again. I told you, Eil Zachnet, don't rush. Fine. The Seder is going slowly. The kids are singing, saying Divrei Torah, and here comes the meal. Now, the women, though, here you prepare for months for that meal of the night of Pesach, right? So again, it's dragging. I couldn't say anything to my mother because he would understand it, right? So I went like this on the side, you know, like we got to hurry up. But he realized what I was doing. And again, he pokes me. And he says to me, I told you, Eil Zachnet, don't rush. Okay. And we ate afikomen after Chatzos. Now, there's a custom, I don't know if it's the Sephardic custom, after the Seder to say Shir HaShirim. Do you say Shir HaShirim? Fine. So everybody's upstairs, and I'm sitting at the table with Rabbi Shvadron, and we're saying Shir HaShirim together. And then I stop and I say to him, Rab Shalom, I just want to beg apologies, because you once told me that ever since you were a child, you never missed the afikomen before Chatzos, and now, because of my family, you ate the afikomen after Chatzos. And he said, why don't you understand? I said, why don't I understand what? He says, where's your priorities? Your mother is an almana. She's a widow. She waits a whole year for the children and grandchildren to come to her house for the Seder, to hear the songs, to hear the Divrei Torah. If I would have stopped the Seder and made it rush, that would have given her pain. Giving pain to an almana is a deraisa. Eating the afikomen before Chatzos is only a minig, a derabanan. Where's your priorities? I can never forget that. Amazing thing. Sometimes we think that we're going to be strict in something, but we have to know what the priorities are. And when you hurt an almana, you hurt a woman who's alone, that's terrible. That's a deraisa. That's what Abbas Yisrael is all about. When you think in a positive way. Now, I want to tell you one more story. This is not easy to listen to, but I will show you what it means, greatness, when Jews care about each other. I have a very dear friend. His name is Rabbi Yaakov Gibber. He's a rabbi in Boca. And before the holiday of Pesach, he took 25 of his balabatim, of his community, and they went to Israel. They went to Israel to give chizuk to the people on the war front, and they went to give chizuk, to give encouragement to the people in the north and the south. Hundreds, if not thousands of people have been dislocated from their homes. And so they were going to go there to give chizuk and encouragement to those people. Now, one of the things that they did was that they went to the Tel HaShomer Hospital. Now, this is so tragic. The Tel HaShomer Hospital is the largest hospital in Israel. It's over 30 acres big. It's one of the greatest hospitals in the world. Many years ago, Newsweek had a survey of the best hospitals in the world, and Tel HaShomer was considered the 9th best hospital in the world. Since the war, they have a whole floor that's dedicated to amputees, Rahman al-Islam. Amputees means people who lost a hand, they lost a shoulder, they lost fingers, they lost a leg. And they went on that floor to try to give chizuk. Now, what in the world do you say to a soldier who lost a leg, or lost an arm, or lost fingers? And they're going from soldier to soldier, and then they see a 70-year-old man is sitting by a bed. He's an amputee in a regular suit. And Rabbi Gibber and the others are looking at him like, what's he doing here? He certainly didn't come from the army. He's much too old to be in the army. But they had to find out what he was doing there. So they go over to him. They say, excuse us, but, we're just wondering, like, what are you doing here? Listen to what he said. You could cry. He said many, many years ago in 73 in the Yom Kippur War, he said he lost a leg and he became an amputee. But he was able to get a job afterwards. And he said, I got married. I have children and grandchildren. He said, I come here every day to tell the soldiers their lives are not over. Imagine that. The chizuk that a person who went through Gehenna of losing a leg, but because he was able to get a job and got married and had children, he comes every day. That's Ahavas Yisrael. Now, every single one of us here and everyone that'll be watching this video has gone through challenges. Every one of us has challenges. But if you overcome a challenge, it's your holy obligation to think of somebody else who's going through that challenge. It could be with marriage, it could be with children, it could be with health, it could be with parnasa. We all have something. That's what Golus is all about. But if Hashem helps you, and you were able to overcome that challenge like this guy, like this amputee, that's Ahavas Yisrael. That's what it means to go and to help and to give confidence to people. That's greatness. So when we talk about these 21 days, we have to think, what can we do to show love to another Jew? Now, I'm not talking about, of course, in your own home. Obviously, you got to take care of your family. But outside the home, sometimes in a congregation, somebody just doesn't have what you have and is going through a tough time. You got to be there for them. That's what Ahavas Yisrael is all about. Now, I want to tell you another thing that I think that we could all use improvement on, especially during these 21 days when we want to elevate ourselves. But I want to tell it to you with a fabulous story. Today in Baltimore, there's a great Talmid Chacham. His name is Rabbi Paysach Krohn. He's written many books and he's given hundreds of, probably thousands of speeches for sure. Every Thursday night he gives a whole shiur and then he talks on Chumash and he always tells a story. And one year he told this amazing story, that there was a fellow from Manhattan that came to visit the Brisker Rav Velvel Soloveitchik, in the early 1950s. Now all of us know the Soloveitchiks are geniuses. They never forget anything. Brilliant Talmidei Chachamim, very, very smart people. And this fellow from Manhattan is talking to the Brisker Rav, and the Brisker Rav says to him in the middle of a conversation, what do you do? What's your job? So he says, Rebbe, I'm a lawyer in Manhattan. Okay. A few minutes later, the conversation goes on. And again, the Brisker Rov says to him, what do you do? What's your job? The guy was surprised. He just said 5 minutes ago that he's a lawyer. Soloveitchiks never forget anything. He says, Rebbe, I'm a lawyer in Manhattan. He said, I know you told me that, but that's not how a Jew answers the question. Now the guy realized that the Rebbe had set him up. He wanted him to say that thing again because the Rebbe was going to show him this. Now this is not to be believed what he told him. He said, bring me from the shelf Yonah, the prophet Yonah that we read on Yom Kippur. And it tells the story, you look it up, in the first chapter. Yonah was on a boat, and there was a storm all around that boat. And the boat was about to sink. But everybody on the boat, the captain and the sailors, they looked out. There was no storm in the rest of the ocean, only around this boat. So they knew that there's somebody on this boat that's causing Hashem to make this boat sink. So they came over to Yonah and they said to him, Hagida nolonu, please tell us, Lemi haraza, who's causing this evil thing to happen to all of us? And then they said to him these words, Ma malachtecha, what's your job? What do you do? Now listen to what he said. Vayomer aleim, he said to them, Ivri anoichi, I am a Yid. V'yas Hashem elokei hashamayim ani yorei, and I serve God in heaven. And listen to what the Radak says. Kivan she'amar, as soon as he said, elokei hashamayim ani yorei, I serve God, that was the answer to Ma malachtecha, what's your job? You're not a graphic artist, you're not a lawyer, you're not a videographer, you're not a doctor. That's how you bring money into the house, but that doesn't define you. Ma malachtecha, what's your job is Ivri anoichi. I am a Yid. That's what we have to remember. That's what the Brisker Rov was trying to tell this guy. Your job doesn't define you. That's how you bring money into the house. But you're a Yid. And I think that that's what we have to remember, because we can't hide it. Wherever you go in the world, snood, no snood, lay shaitel, no shaitel, big yarmulke, small yarmulke, baseball hat, front in the cap, back in the cap, kangaroo hat, everybody knows you're a Yid. Ivri anoichi. And you know what Rabbi Fran said? A few weeks later, after he told his story, he got a call from a stockbroker. And the stockbroker says, Rebbe, I want to tell you something. I'm on the phone a whole day making deals. And sometimes, I say things that might not be 100%. But after I heard your speech, I had a paperweight made to put on my desk. And on the paperweight, it had 2 words, Ivri anoichi. I am a Yid. So just remember, the next time you're on a plane, or the next time you're in a restaurant, or on a bus, or when you're driving, and somebody does something that's not so nice to you, just remember, Ivri anoichi, you're a Yid. And what you act, the way you act, you don't just represent the Sephardic community in Plainview. You represent all the Jews in the world, because you can't hide. And especially today, we have to be so careful. I don't have to tell you how much rampant anti-Semitism there is today, all over. Now, there's really 2 types of anti-Semitism. And I recently had to give a talk about this, how to combat anti-Semitism. And there's one type of anti-Semitism that will always be here. There's no way that we can ever fight it, but there is an anti-Semitism that we can fight. I'm not talking now about the demonstrations. That's going to end soon. As soon as the war ends, all these things will be forgotten. By next year, everybody will be forgetting about all these demonstrations. But the point is, you know what the Gemara says? It's frightening. The Gemara tells us, "My Har Sinai." This is a Gemara in Shabbos, Pei Tes Amud Aleph. Why is it called Har Sinai? You know what the Gemara says? Sinai Haresha Yordo Sino La'olam. The Goyim hate us from Sinai because they didn't accept the Torah and we did. We live on a higher standard. We have a higher morality. We have a higher elevation, a higher purpose in life. And they can't stand it because they know it's the right thing and they didn't want to do it. They weren't makabel the Torah. When we hold a cup of wine by V'hisha Amda at the Seder, don't we say, Shebachol dor v'dor oimdim aleinu l'chaleisenu? In every generation, they want to get rid of us. So there's two types of anti-Semitism. There's existential, that means they don't want us to exist, like the Iranians say they don't want Israel to exist. But then there's a different type of anti-Semitism. The anti-Semitism of dislike. That's what's in America before these demonstrations. Sometimes a Jew acts in such a way it's so unpleasant. The way he drives, the way he does business, or the way he talks. We could stop that. We could be nice. We could be nice to our neighbors. In Plainville, we had a lot of neighbors that are not religious. The police are not Jewish. The fire department is not Jewish. But we have to act in such a way that anybody that sees us knows we're wonderful people. That's how we can fight that second type of anti-Semitism, and that we can fight. Remember, Ivri Anoichi, because you can't hide it, no matter where you are. Now there's another Gemara that tells us why the Churban happened. In Shabbos Kuf Yutes Amud Beis, it tells us many, many reasons why the Churban happened, the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And one of the people in the Gemara, Abaya says, Lo chorva Yerushalayim ela b'shvil shechilu lo boas haShabbos, because they didn't observe Shabbos properly. Shabbos is one of the signs of a person being Jewish. And because they weren't careful in Shabbos, that was one of the reasons of the Churban. So maybe in these 21 days, we have to think, what could we do a little bit stronger to observe the Shabbos? And the Maharsha writes on this Gemara, he says, you know, the laws of Shabbos are not easy. We have to study the laws of Shabbos. Many of us study the laws of Lashon Hara, and we study many other different laws of Tefillah, but many times we don't study what you could talk about on Shabbos. You're not supposed to talk about business on Shabbos. I'm not talking about the Yankees and the Mets, but that's a different story. But the idea is there are certain things that are considered secular. And so we shouldn't be reading the business sections of a newspaper on Shabbos. So there's certain things that we read and shouldn't be reading, and talk and we shouldn't be talking. We have to be a little bit more careful. Now I want to tell you a fabulous story, because all of you here in the Sephardic community always sing this song, Ki Eshmer Shabbat Kel Yishmereni, right? You know it better than me. Okay? But I want to tell you a great story. Now I want to tell you who told me this story. There's the head of an organization, a fabulous organization in Israel called Hidabrut. The man who is the head of the Hidabrut is a genius of a person. His name is Zamir Cohen. He's written many books. I can't even understand the books on science and biology and chemistry. The guy's such a genius. Oh, besides that, he's written on Torah, besides everything else. But the man is a brilliant man. But I called him because I heard that he told the story, and then he told this to me. It's amazing. Now listen to this. What happened was that in Eretz Yisrael, there was a kibbutz. It's called Nir Oz Kibbutz. It's not a religious kibbutz. But there was a couple there that became Bali Tshuva. They became religious, they became Shomer Shabbos, and every Shabbat they would go away from this Nir Oz Kibbutz because the people were Mechala Shabbos. So they didn't want to be with them. So they would go to Yerushalayim to friends. They would go to Ashkelon, to Ashdod, different places where they had friends. But this woman was expecting her fourth child. And she was expecting the baby on Simchas Torah on October 7th. And she said to her husband, you know, we're going to have to be, Simchas Torah will have to be in the Nir Oz Kibbutz. I got to be near the doctor. He said, yeah, but Simchas Torah is a religious holiday. How can we be in a place that's not religious on this holiday of Simchas Torah? She said, look, I'm sure that they're going to have some dancing in the shul. They'll have candy apples and whatever, flags, but I got to be near the doctor. So they were there. They were there October 7th. Now listen to this. This is not to be believed. On October 7th, when Hamas, Yimach Shemon v'Zichron, came down with the parachutes, and they went into all the houses, and they were killing and wounding and doing the worst things. They went into every single house in near Oz except this house. They went on the right side, they went on the left side. Nobody could believe it. And they were looking out of the slats. They were terrified that they were going to come into their house next. They didn't come in at all. And their lives were saved. And nobody could figure it out until 2 days later, when some of the Hamas soldiers were killed and the IDF went through their uniforms to try to find anything that was in their pockets, any ammunition. Then they found a map. The Palestinians had betrayed the people that they were working for. And they made a map of every home and said, go to the back room on the right. That's where the children are. Go to the back room on the left. Don't go into this house because there's a dog there. And the dog will bark. And then about this house, on the map it said, don't go into this house. They're never there on Shabbos. Could you imagine? And that's why they didn't go there. And that's why they were saved. And you know something? Zamir Coleman told me the next week on Shabbat she had a little girl. But the point is, Ki Eshmer Shabbos, Kel Yishmereni. The only reason that they were saved is because they were Shomer Shabbat. And the Palestinians understood that. And they knew they're not going to be there. That's incredible. Ki Eshmer Shabbos. It's an investment. There's no question. It's not easy to learn the Hilchos Shabbos. But today we have the Mishnah Berurah in English. You have so many svarim in English that tell us about Hilchos Shabbos. Let's try a little bit more. And that was the heroes of Shabbos. I'll tell you another story about Shabbos. Just absolutely incredible. And of course, all these stories are in this book, which is, sorrow and celebration, because I wrote about the 3 weeks and the 9 days and Tisha B'Av and Tu B'Av, which talks about the time when the girls would go out to the fields and the people that were able to get shidduchim. So let me tell you this story that happened with the Bartfelds. There's a pediatrician in Waterbury. When he was in Queens, I did his son's bris. I did one of them in Waterbury as well. He told me a great story about his grandparents, Joseph and Berta, Yosef and Bela. They lived in Mexico City, and they had a certain store, a leather goods store, a silver shop that was in the central shopping district of Mexico City. And they sold all kinds of medallions and souvenirs, and it was a very, very busy place. But they were closed on Shabbos. And one day, officers of the Mexican City Business Council came to them and said, you must stay open on the Sabbath. And he said, why must I stay open on the Sabbath? I'm a religious Jew. I'm not staying open. They said, no, because you see, you're in the central business district. And your store is so popular. I'll just tell you what it was called. It was called Tienda de Plaza. It's a silver shop. And if you close, then people aren't going to come here because you're one of the main stores in the business district. And other people are losing money because of you. Because if you're closed, they're going to come back in the middle of the week, not on Shabbos. And people are upset that you're closed because then they lose money. He said, look, there's nothing I can do. My God said that we can't work on Shabbat, and I'm not going to work on Shabbat. He said, well, we're going to give you a fine. Every Saturday that you're closed, you're going to be fined. He said, you could do whatever you want. I'm not going to switch. I'm not staying open. They said, okay, you'll see. You're going to get a big fine every Saturday that you're closed. Friday afternoon, the first week, a Mexican officer comes in and says to him, listen, I know what the police or what the Mexican Business Council said to you, but I'm the district police officer here. This is my district. If you take care of me, I'll take care of you. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to Mexico, but that's how things work. You get a traffic ticket, you don't show your license, you show a $20 bill, and, you're off. So this guy, Fernando, I shouldn't say Fernando, that's your name, right? Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, Jose, right? Okay. All right, so let's say Jose, right? So Jose comes over to him and he says, listen, you take care of me, I'll take care of you. And you won't be reported because I'm the one that's supposed to give the report. This is my district. So sure enough, Mr. Bartfeld, Joseph, he took out an envelope, he put some cash in it, he gave it to the guy, and of course he wasn't reported. And this went on for months. One Shabbat, there was a guy driving like a maniac in this business district, and he hit a car, and his car went flying into this silver shop that was closed. But he went right through the window, and the whole glass was shattered. And now it was open. It could be robbed. Because all the glass and the doors were smashed open because of his car crash. So he only lived a block and a half away from the store, this Mr. Bartfeld. So his neighbor's store ran to his house and said, Joe, you got to get to the store. Your store is open. Everybody's going to come and rob it. Because this guy drove like a maniac and the glass is all broken and shattered. He said, I am not going near my store on Shabbat. He said, but they're going to rob you. He said, it doesn't make a difference. I don't even want to go there. And he stayed away from the store a whole Shabbos. Saturday night, right after Havdalah, he ran to the store. And he sees that district policeman standing there with a gun. No one was able to get into that store. And he said to him, what are you doing here? He said, I know what Shabbos means to you. And you're my friend. And if it means that much to you, it means that much to me. Now you can take over. You imagine? Ki Eshmer Shabbos Keo Yishmereni, and he didn't lose one medallion, one silver jug, nothing, because that Mexican policeman was protecting him. Now I want to tell you what this fellow did, this Bartfeld. It's just amazing. He had two sons. One son he sent to Telz Yeshiva before he was even bar mitzvah, and his son is the doctor who told me this story. The second son is a rabbi in Toronto, in one of the big shuls in Toronto. All because of Shabbos. Hashem took care of him. Ki Eshmer Shabbos, Kel Yishmereni. Let us try as much as possible. There's something else that I feel that we should learn, especially in these 21 days. There was a great tzaddik. I met him once. I heard him speak once also. His name was Rabbi Elia Lapyan. He was the mashkiach in the yeshiva in the northern part of Israel called Kfar Hasidim. He was a great tzaddik. He was a person of Kabbalah. He was very special. And he would get up very, very early in the morning before Alos HaShachar to start doing his Avodas Hashem. And as he got older, his family said to him, maybe it's not so healthy that a man like you at your age should get up so early. So he said, I want to tell you something. He said, after 120, I'm going to be going to Shamayim. And when I go to Shamayim, they're going to take out the Shulchan Aruch and they're going to start testing me to see if I did everything that was proper. Now, in the first siman of Shulchan Aruch, you know what it says? Yizgaber ka'ari, a person should be strong like a lion to get up to do the service of his creator. Shehu ma'orer hashachar, he awakens the dawn. So it says in Shulchan Aruch in the first siman that you got to get up early. So I'm going to fail in the first question that they ask me? Of course I got to get up early. And when I heard this story, I was thinking, something? That there's something that says in that first siman that maybe we should be a little bit more careful. Again, I don't know the Sephardic custom, but I think this is for everyone, certainly for the Ashkenaz. It says, Ro'ui l'chol yirei shamayim, every God-fearing Jew should be saddened and concerned al Churban Beis HaMikdash. How are we showing our concern for the Beis HaMikdash? Now, if you look in your Sidurim, you will see that before Birchat HaMazon, on Shabbos, do you say Shir HaMalos? You don't say, or during the week, Al Narois Bovel. Well, this video is going to Ashkenazic people as well. So I just want to say that it says in the Mishnah Brura that before you bench, before you bless Hashem and thank Him for the food, you should say that kapitel, Al Narois Bovel. Al Narois Bovel is chapter 137 in Tehillim, and it talks about the Churban. So when a person is satiated and filled with food, he should remember this is not exactly where we're supposed to be. We have to remember the Churban, and therefore we should say Al Narais Bavel. Now, I could tell you that in many of the summer camps, during the 9 days, all the kids, before they bench, they sing Al Narais Bavel. There's a tune that goes together with it, and it's something that everybody who's watching, if you're not Sephardic and that's not your custom, that you don't say it ever, or you don't even say Shir HaMalos on Shabbos, but otherwise, for all the Ashkenazim, we really have to begin to be a little bit more careful, and that is to be sure that we say Al Narais Bavel, especially during the 9 days. There's another thing that we have to be careful about. All of us remember the story in the Gemara of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Now, we all know the story. We don't have to go through it, right? Kamsa was the friend of the host, and he was supposed to be invited, and by mistake, they invited Bar Kamsa. And the host was very nasty, and he embarrassed him, and he told him to get out, and he said, I'll pay for the party, I'll pay for everything, and he threw him out. And the rabbis didn't say anything. And this Bar Kamsa was so humiliated. And because he was humiliated, that was the beginning of the end. And the Orchos Tzadikim writes about this Gemara in Gittin, V'churban Yerushalayim, the destruction of Yerushalayim, this Galgel came about al Yedei Boishes the Bar Kamsa, because they embarrassed Bar Kamsa. And therefore I think that one of the things that we have to begin to be a little bit more careful in these 21 days is not to shame other people. Many, many times we embarrass people. We're not careful the way we speak. And he even writes, the Orchos Tzadikim writes, that even when you're learning Gemara and somebody says something wrong, you're not supposed to say to somebody, you don't know what you're talking about. You're out of your mind. Now, of course, you don't mean it in a bad way. You're just trying to explain that what he's saying is not the right idea and not the right concept and not the right logical deduction. But there's a way to say it. There's a way to criticize a spouse. There's a way to criticize a child. You don't tell somebody you're good for nothing. You don't tell somebody you're wrong. And you know something? If let's say that you're going out with someone and you decide not to continue, don't tell your family the reason why you're not going out. It's embarrassing to that girl that's being rejected. Or if you don't take somebody who applied for a job and you refuse him for whatever reason, don't tell people why you rejected him. That's embarrassing. We have to be a little bit more sensitive to the feelings of others. That's what the Orchos Tzadikim is telling us. And I want to tell you a great story that was told to me by somebody who witnessed it. Now, we know one of the greatest yeshivas in the world today is in northern England in a place called Gateshead. And the Rosh Yeshiva there is Rabbi Avram Gurewitz. Now, this story happened a number of years ago. There was a boy who came to the yeshiva, and he was the funniest kid. Everybody loved him. He cracked up everyone. He was hysterical. He's a very good boy in learning, and he was there for 3 years, and then he decided he's going to go to a yeshiva in Israel. So they made for him what's called a Su'udas Pereda. Pereda means like a goodbye party. And everybody was waiting for this guy's speech. Now they knew the Rosh Yeshiva would speak, and the Rebbes would speak, and the Chavrusas would speak, and his friends would speak. He was going to be the last speaker. But they were just waiting for his speech because they knew he was a crack-up. Nobody could possibly have imagined what he said, what he would say. And somebody who was there called and told me what he said. He said, Rabotai, he said, I have been in this yeshiva for 3 years, but I want to tell you something that none of you know. He said, all of us know that the Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Avram Gurewitz, is a great Talmid Chacham. We have been in his shiurim and we have gained greatly. But none of you could possibly imagine what kind of great Bal Midot, what kind of great character he has. And he says, I want to tell you a story. He said, when I came to this yeshiva, I was here only 3 days. And somehow I got into a little fight with some kids that I had just met here in the school. And they started chasing me. Now, I didn't know where I was running, so I ran into the Beis Medrash. And in the Beis Medrash, I saw a door in the back. I didn't realize that it was a library, and there was no other way out. Once you're in that library, you're stuck there unless you come out of the Beis Medrash. So I ran into that library. I didn't see any other doors. I quickly locked the door, and my friends were banging. We got to get in. And I said to them, what are you, crazy? You're going to beat me up? I'm going to stay here until you guys leave. And they were banging on the door, and finally they stopped. I guess they gave up. 10 minutes later, after I was in there, there was a knock. I said, who's there? And some person says, it's the Rosh Yeshiva. I said, yeah, the Rosh Yeshiva. You're not the Rosh Yeshiva. You're my friends. You want to beat me up. Get out of here. He says, I'm the Rosh Yeshiva. I need a sefer from the library. Yeah, you need a sefer. Like I need a sefer. Come on, get out of here. You guys are just playing a game with me. It's quiet for 2 or 3 minutes. And then there's a knock again. And he's beginning to think, oh my gosh, maybe it is the Rosh Yeshiva. And he opens the door. And he sees it really is Rabbi from Gurewitz, the Rosh Yeshiva. But when he began opening the door, he saw the Rosh Yeshiva go like this. He was looking down, and he covered his head to allow this boy to open the door and run out. And he said, Rosh Yeshiva, I want you to know that if you had not hidden your face and you would have seen me, I would have left the yeshiva that day. Because I knew I was going to be in your share and you would recognize me. But because you allowed me the dignity to be able to go out and not look at my face and not let me be shamed, I was able to be in this yeshiva for 3 long years. And I just want to ask you for mechila. I just want to ask now after 3 years, because you never knew that it was me, and I just want to thank you for not shaming me. Isn't that beautiful? That's what greatness is. What if we were the Rosh Yeshiva? Oh boy, we'd go after that kid, right? And send him back to wherever he came from on a plane or on a drone. But the point is, look at that sensitivity. That sensitivity, what does it mean? Not to shame somebody. That's really what we have to learn, especially in this time of Bar Kamsa, when Bar Kamsa was embarrassed. I want to tell you something very interesting. When I was writing this book of sorrow, it's a celebration, of course, I was writing about the Churban Beis HaMikdash and some of the stories, some of the lessons that we could learn. And then I saw a very, very interesting, frightening Gemara. And the Gemara says like this, Shikula, it's the same merit, or the same value, I should say. Misosan shel tzadikim kisreifas beis alakenu. That God forbid, when a tzaddik dies, it's as if a Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Because the Beis HaMikdash is where we get our inspiration. And the tzaddik is where we get our inspiration. And if a tzaddik dies, it's as if a Beis HaMikdash is gone. So I decided, and then it occurred to me, in Shemoneh Esrei, I never thought about this until I wrote this book and I saw this Chazal. After we daven ala tzadikim v'ala chasidim, what's the next bracha in Shemoneh Esrei? Does anybody know? V'Yerushalayim Mircha. So ala tzadikim and then V'Yerushalayim. So if the tzadikim are missing, it's a connection to Yerushalayim. I never thought of that. So I decided that what I'm going to do in the back of this book is that from those 21 days, from Shiva Asar B'Tammuz till Tisha B'Av and then till Tu B'Av, a few days afterwards, I'm going to try to find the great rabbis that died during this time and write a little biography about them and write some Divrei Torah about them. Because if the death of a tzaddik is like the destruction of a Beis HaMikdash, let's see what these tzaddikim were all about. So every day, just about every day of these 21 days, I have about a certain tzaddikim who passed away. So I want to tell you a story about the Arizal. And we're going to talk about 2 more others, especially Rashi. Rashi's Yortzeit was today, the 29th day of Tammuz. So we're going to talk about Rashi. That's how we're going to close. But I just want to tell you about the Arizal. The Arizal was the greatest mikubal since Rab Shimon Bar Yochai. And he lived a very short time. It's frightening. He was born in 1534 and he died in 1572. He was only 38 years old. Imagine the Arizal. Now, I want to tell you a story about him. And I'm telling you that this story changed me. And I believe that it should change every single one of us. The Arizal was the type of person that he could look at your face and tell you what sin you did and what you have to do to fix it, to make the tikkun. Now, I don't know how many people would want to be in his presence, right? Would you like to go to somebody who takes one look and say, hey, I'll tell you what you did? He could be very frightening, right? Anyhow, there was this guy who came to his house, and he was moving very hesitatingly the way he was sitting around the table. And the Arizal said, are you in pain? He said, yeah, my shoulder hurts me terribly. And I don't know why. I didn't bruise the shoulder, and I'm not sick, so I don't know why. So the Arizal looks him straight in the face, and he says, I'll tell you why. Because you're not careful in Mayim Achronan. Mayim Achronim, you're supposed to wash right before you bench. And he says, Rebbe, what do you mean I always wash Mayim Achronim? He says, yeah, but you talk afterwards? He said, yeah, I learned Mishnayos because if you're at a table that there was no Divrei Torah, so it's a bad sign. So right after I wash my Machonan, I learned Mishnayos, the parak. So you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to talk. The second you wash my Machonan, then you bench. No talking, nothing, not even Divrei Torah. And the Arizal told him why. Amazing, you could faint from this. And it says like this. He says, the Gemara says in Brachos Mem Beis Amud Aleph, 42a. Takef linetilas yodayim bracha. Right after you wash your hands, and Rashi says, Mayim achronan, you're supposed to say a bracha. You bench right away. Now watch this. Who knows how to spell in Hebrew the word takef? Tov, kof, pei. The word kosef, shoulder, is kof, tof, pei. He said, you're not careful with tetakef. Hashem is punishing you with your kosef. Imagine that. I guess only the Arizal could think of that. And I tell you the truth, it's about 2 months since I read that story about the Arizal when I was writing this part. So far, it should be. I haven't said a word after Mamachon. I'm careful. You're not even supposed to say the Shir HaMalach and Al Naris Bovel for those who say it after Mamachon. That you say first. Mamachon, Takef Linatila Bracha. So let's review everything that we said, and then we're going to end with something about Rashi that is just amazing. You'll never forget it. So let's remember we're in the 21 days between Shivas B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. 21 days between Rosh Hashanah and Hoshana Rabbah. 21 days that the almond tree blossoms, white flowers, and the flowers grow in 21 days. Libun Avonot. Libun, we bleach and we whiten our sins. Now's the time to improve. To improve, because the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of Sinas Chinam. Let's have Avas Chinam, like Rav Matisyahu Solomon, who went to that Bar Mitzvah boy. How Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld brought out the laundry to that person, who that person went to the hospital in Tel HaShomer to show the soldiers that life is not over. Let's remember what the Brisker Rav told us, that Yonah said, Ivri Anoichi, I am a Jew. That's the answer. Let's be very, very careful. The way we drive, the way we talk, the way we act, because you can't hide it. Everybody knows that you're a Jew. Let's remember, we can fight anti-Semitism, not the existential, because from Sinai, they hate us. But at least the dislike we can change if we act nice and kind to our neighbors and to everybody in the street. Let's be careful about Chilul Shabbos. Let's remember that story that Zamir Cohen told us about that family that was saved in Nir Oz because they were never there for Shabbos, and the Palestinians knew that they're not there for Shabbos. Let's remember how the Bartfelds, how his store was saved because of that policeman who understood what Shabbos means to him. Let's remember Rabbi Lapian would get up early because of the first Siman of Shulchan Aruch. We should remember the Churban every day, those of us who say, Al Nareis Bovel. Let's remember not to shame anyone because that's how the Churban happened with Bar Kamsa. And we saw that beautiful story of Rabbi Avram Gurewitz who didn't allow the person to be shamed. And let's remember, as we said, the Arizal with Maimar Chroinon. Today, the 29th day of Tammuz, was the Yortzeit of Rashi. And I wrote about him in this book. Now, I want to tell you something adorable that you will never forget. One of my closest friends, if not my closest friend, is a guy by the name of Rabbi Dr. Yaakov Solomon. He's a therapist. I don't know why all my friends are therapists, but whatever. It's my own problem. But he told me that he was once sitting at his Shabbos table, and he asked one of his children, does anybody know when Rashi lived? So his 9-year-old son said, yeah, from 1040 to 1105. He said, how do you know that? He said, because my Rebbe said that's when we have recess. From 1040 to 1105. I'm telling you, I have never forgotten that date. It's crazy, right? That's a genius of a Rebbe, right? Who gave us Siman. You're never going to forget. Somebody will wake you up in the middle of the night. When was Rashi lived? 1040, 1105. We had reason. Now, I don't know if the Rambam was born during lunchtime. I don't know that. But 1040 to 1105. But anyway, now, in the research that I did about Rashi, because his Yortzeit was the 29th of Tammuz, I saw the Chidah said that before Rashi began writing his commentary on Chumash, he fasted 613 days. Could you imagine? That's what Chidah said about Rashi. Rashi knew that his Peirush, his commentary, was going to be so important. He fasted 613 days. So I want to tell you 2 stories about Rashi's parents. The second one, that's what we're going to close with, is so adorable, you won't believe it. The first one, there was his father had a very precious diamond, a pearl or a diamond. And there were some Gentiles that came, they wanted to buy it for an Avodah Zarah. And he was afraid that they would pressure him. And so one day when he was walking, he knew they were going to come to buy it from him. He dropped it into the ocean. So like this, he would have no nisayon, he would have no test. And he could say he just doesn't have it anymore. And it says in the Sefarim that he got a message from Shemayim that one day he's going to have a pearl and a diamond that's going to light up the world. And that was Rashi who lit up the world. Now Rashi, when his mother was expecting him, she was walking in a street. I was on that street. In 2009, I took a whole group of people to the city of Worms. That's where Rashi was born, and that's where he had his yeshiva. And she was walking down a narrow street, and what happened was there was a horseman who saw a Jewish woman pregnant, and he wanted to knock her down. And he took his spear, and with his horse, he started going fast. And they say, miraculously, the wall that she was standing by indented, and she was able to protected into that wall, and the rider just rode on. Now that wall with the indentation is still there. I was there and I saw it. Now in 2009, we had a woman that was with us on the trip. There were many, many couples that came on this trip. Her name was Michelle Inselbach. She's from Lakewood. I wrote about it in here. And she was expecting. So I said to her, hey, you're expecting. Why don't you let's take a picture of you in that wall. Why don't you just stand in that wall where it's indented? That's where Rashi's mother was saved. She said, that's a great idea. She says, Rabbi Krohn, if I have a boy, you're going to be the male, and I'm going to name him after Rashi. And 3 months later, she had a baby girl. But we still wished her mazel tov. And so we end on a high note. Hashem should bless all of you. You should have an easy fast on Tisha B'Av. But we should take these 21 days to be elevated, and hopefully we'll be able to grow and be inspired. And again, if anybody would like to read all these things that I said, it's all right there. Emmanuel's there. He'll take care of it. And Hashem should bless all of us. We should be able to do this next year in Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for listening.